Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, last week, in the second week of the riding, our time in the riding, I had the honour of meeting and having meaningful discussions with two groups of youth. One was the Campbell River Youth Action Committee, and the other was the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society youth. When I speak with youth, I hear again and again very intelligent questions, thoughtful discussion, and such a respectful manner. It's an honor to spend time with them and see the great energy many youth are bringing forward in our country. In those situations, I'm often questioned about this place, about the way we work here for the betterment of all Canadians. I hear questions about government and how it works with opposition, the importance of the roles in this place. So many young people seem to understand fundamentally the value of having diversity at the table, differing opinions, and thoughtful discussion. We discuss how MPs hear from constituents and how MPs voice those important realities of communities across Canada. This time, we also talked about parliamentary privilege. The youth were interested in what was happening in this House and interested in what they were seeing in Prague. I had this discussion in my riding, and today I'm rising to speak on this important question of privilege, and most importantly, the ability of each member of Parliament in this House to represent their constituents. On March the 22nd, on Budget Day 2017, members of this House were denied access to Parliament because the Prime Minister's empty motorcade blocked the motorcade. The Constitution of Canada assures that members of Parliament elected by the members of their constituency have unfettered access to this House. This is to assure that we can do our jobs and be accountable to the people we represent. On this particular day, that was denied to two members in this place. So I'm honored today to stand up and speak on why this right to access this place is so fundamental as a member of Parliament. I also want to talk about the important part of how this could have been resolved quicker, but right now we're seeing this government create an atmosphere of bad faith and have a strong bullying attitude that has led us to where we are right now. Finally, I want to address the issues of parliamentary reform and the so-called discussion this government seems to be focusing on. Mr. Speaker, when I was elected, I received my Member of Parliament identification, and when I read on the back that it was my parliamentary privilege to be in this place, and that in fact, as it says under the law of parliamentary privilege, the bearer has free and open access at all times without obstruction or interference to the precedence of the House of Parliament, which to the bearer is a member. I'm sure that I stand with other members of Parliament in this House that there is a moment almost every day in this place where I take that breath and remember what an honor it is to be here. That thousands of people in my riding of North Island, Powell River expect me to do my work here representing them. That when I stand up to vote, I am standing with them in mind. This was denied to two members of this House who could not vote, could not stand up for the thousands of people who rely on them to do so. I am pleased that all members of this House are taking this issue seriously. But instead of letting the motion of privilege run its course, the Liberals pursued a hostile procedure to reverse the Speaker's ruling, which supported the fact that privilege was indeed breached. In doing so, they invited a procedural fight to go on with a second motion of privilege coming from the opposition. You cannot, on the one hand, claim to work with others to reform this institution while immediately using its instruments to enforce your majority. On April the 6th, the Liberal government shut down debate on the question of privilege when the matter was superseded by the adoption of a motion to proceed to the order of the day. In the long history of Parliament, this is unprecedented. It is a basic and fundamental right for all of us to sit in this House representing our constituents. On April the 6th, this government attempted to change this. This from a party who campaigned on being more open, transparent, accessible, and accountable to Canadians. This is a promise that is not being delivered on. You know, earlier today I heard another member say, I am a reasonable person, and I believe that in this House we are full of many reasonable people. When I think of having a meaningful discussion on this discussion paper, I know that the people in this place are willing to have this discussion. But we have to look at the reality that for the past few weeks, Liberals have claimed that all they want is a discussion about changing how our Parliament works. We agree that changes could be made. It is important to understand something that stands at the core of this meaningful conversation on this discussion paper: power and fairness. Opposition has been clear from the very beginning. In this place, when there are discussions about how we do things here, there is a commitment to consensus. This is the history of this place. It is a deep honor of the fact that the government changes and that the function of this House must allow for voices to be heard. But red flags have now been quickly raised. The proposed changes needed to be enacted so quickly. The Procedure and House Affairs Committee could barely keep up with other ministerial requests. The discussion, as the Liberal House Leader likes to refer to it, has never happened. This government has attempted to ram in the committee, and that failed. Now, they announce that they will unilaterally be forcing through changes. You know, Mr. Speaker, I'm heartbroken about this reality. You know, the people of my riding sent me here to speak for them, and I want to do that important work. I right now have situations where people are coming into my office on a daily basis because they can't find a home to live in. I have people coming in because they're trying to make their small business work and they're facing challenges. This is what the people of our ridings are experiencing, but at the core of the work we do here, it's always about the process of how we do it. I want to work on those key issues, but if we have a dysfunctional process, we will never get that work done in a meaningful way. How can we honestly talk about reforming this place when the Liberals' procedural torpedo our first motion on privilege and disregard unanimous decision-making? Our unified opposition with the Conservatives was never about the proposed changes. They were about the process. Changes to the inner working of Parliament have a long history of parties putting aside their differences and finding consensus. It is not unreasonable for opposition parties to call it for what it is, a Liberal power grab. They would have never agreed to this if they were in opposition. These are not changes meant to make Parliament better. They are meant to make Parliament better for Liberals and make life easier for the Prime Minister. As Canadians are the ones who pay the price with a government that is less accountable, we need to stand up in this House and speak out. Why is this government so hard-pressed to pass a reform of some kind? I confess that I wonder if it is simply a cover for the failed electoral reform promise. How can Parliament be modernized if we do not carry the wisdom of those who've gone before us? In my life, many elders have told me, do not throw away the knowledge of the past for the ideas of the future. They are all of value. Mr. Speaker, the matter of parliamentary privilege is key to our Canadian democracy. I'm very disappointed that this is where we are today, that this debate has been stopped by the government. I hope they are listening to their colleagues on this important issue and that we will soon see some respectful return to this House. I would love to have a meaningful discussion about modernization, but it needs to be fair and the power needs to be balanced. I wonder if the government House Leader knows that many members in this House, like me, live so far away from this place that the only flight that gets us home is the one that leaves first in the morning. If we shorten the work week and have more weeks, it means a lot less time for me and my constituency, a time that I honor profoundly to spend with my constituents, to hear what's happening, to have those meaningful conversations. So I hope that the goodness of the people in this place will come forward, that we will see some positive action moving forward, and that we will understand the wisdom of consensus when we talk about these key issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the things the Government House Leader has consistently done is said that we want to have this discussion on the issue of how we can change our standing orders. The member just made reference in terms of how Fridays impacts her. Let me share with her how Fridays would impact me. Mr. Speaker, if we work a little few extra hours on a Thursday and a Tuesday, I in turn then can fly out Friday morning and be in my riding for 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. That gives me an entire day. That might allow me to attend a graduation service. It might allow me to meet with more of my constituents, do more work within my constituency. And this is something in which all the Government House Leader has been trying to do is to get people around the table, in particular Proc, to start talking about it, to have some dialogue on it. And it's the resistance that's coming. It's saying, well, unless you do this, we're not even going to enter the discussion group. Mr. Speaker, today we're not talking about those issues. Today we're talking about the privilege issue. We agree, the Government of Canada, every member of the Liberal caucus wants this to go to committee, Mr. Speaker. Every single member of the Liberal caucus wants it to go to committee. We would like to see it voted on today, Mr. Speaker. The opposition say they want it to go to committee, but their actions do not reflect their will. If the will is to have it to go to committee, all we have to do is allow it to vote. We support it. I suspect every member in the House is going to support it. I might suggest to you, Mr. Speaker, in listening, that at times maybe it's the opposition that has alternative motives. And if they do, I would suggest they put them to the side and let's deal firsthand by sending this thing to Proc where it belongs, where the issue of unfettered access can be dealt with, and all members will be assured that they will have unfettered access to the parliamentary precinct. That's what the Liberal Party wants.
The Honourable Member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his passionate comments. I don't know if I heard a specific question in there. I really appreciate the meaningful discussion that could potentially happen, and I would like to see happen, about the impacts of changing some of our procedures in this place and what they'll mean for people who live in different parts of this country and serve different constituencies. It was interesting to hear what his experience was. You know, for me, it takes 9.5 to 10.5 hours to get back to my community. It's certainly a long journey, and very, very thankful to all of the constituents who consistently compliment me on doing that work. It's an honor for me to do that. But you know, I'll say something that's so important. When you have a discussion, if you have it in a way where there's a balance of power, where you honor everybody, good things can come from that. So right now we're being asked to have conversations with a majority committee, not in the good faith and the good practices of people before us who made sure that when we were talking about these issues, we had consensus. So I look forward to this government looking at understanding what a consensus model is and making sure that when we have discussions, we don't say we're just trying to have a discussion. Oh, by the way, we have all the power, so however the discussion ends, we will be the people who make that decision. When you have all the power, you better make sure you have a process that makes sense for everyone.
Questions and comments. Question commentaire. The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable colleague from Vancouver Island North Powell River. I mean, she is really someone that we can admire for someone who represents her constituents. She's held 28 town halls. Like me, she lives in a rural riding, and that's very difficult to do in a rural riding, never mind being in one of the farthest ridings in Canada. Like she said, it takes her 10 hours to get home, and then she gets on the road. And the government's floated ideas of having us sit more weeks and sit longer. Well, it's really difficult when you live in a rural riding, and I know this because for me to get to some communities, it takes me 18 hours from Ottawa to get to Vancouver Island, drive across Vancouver Island, and take a boat 2 hours north to get to a community like Heshquit. So when you get to a nation like that, and I have 10 nations in my riding, she has more nations in her riding. These are small communities, and if we don't get out and meet these communities, we don't build trust. We don't get to know their issues, and we rely on getting to those communities in those weeks that we're in the riding, because we live so far away, it's hard to get there, that if we extend the sitting weeks, it's going to make it more difficult. Mr. Speaker, maybe the member can talk about the importance of making sure that we have time to get to those people in those communities, and the importance of Friday questions so that we can ask questions on behalf of those small communities, because we won't get that opportunity if they take away Friday sittings, because we won't be able to ask questions because we're going to get shut down and they're going to get shut down and their voice is going to be lost, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. It's been an honor for me to do town halls. One of the things I think that's important for those of us who represent rural ridings is, for me, I have to do at least 4 town halls just to sort of touch the corners of my riding. So it leads to a lot of travel time while I'm in the riding. I think it's very important that we make sure that we have a conversation that is meaningful about this type of reform and change, but it needs to be one that has a balance of power so that we can move forward. It is important we talk to those small communities because we have to represent them. We have to build the trust, and we have to ask questions in this House, and some days, Fridays are the most powerful days to ask questions for your constituents. It would be a sad loss for all of us.